Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of D&D Horror Stories. In today's video, we have a tale about a dungeon master that has to deal with multiple that guys, and a story about a DM that brings a player's personal life into the game. But before we get into that, I got to do the YouTube thing where I ask for likes, comments, and subscriptions in order to appease the algorithm dragon, as I think he's found my location. And to help out with that, here is Ziggy playing with his favorite toy. Thank you, Ziggy. Now, with that said, let's get into the stories. The Guy That Just Kept Dying, and the Guy Who Just Didn't Care, by Reddit user Zarunak. In my first campaign, I had a party that was a mix of all the RPG horror story tropes. I have already posted that story, though somehow it went mostly okay. This was my second game in this setting, and fourth campaign overall. We used Pathfinder this time. I revisited the setting with a new group of players, and one of them was an edgy rogue with an 8-page backstory. How they managed to even write such a thing, I don't know. This player was actually pretty good, until the Ghoul Island. There is always a Ghoul Island in my nautical games. Technically, a sargasso, where the ground is made of packed together seaweed and infested with the ambulatory remains of stranded sailors who turned to cannibalism to survive. This rogue went scouting and failed to consider the sargasso as flat. There are very few things to hide behind. The rogue was spotted by a pack of ghouls and attacked. They were too far for the party to reach and got surrounded and paralyzed. Now, I had a plan. Let the ghouls slowly kill them over several rounds so the party can catch up and drive them off. They have healing abilities, but can't raise dead characters yet, so this should work fine. Except, the player starts explaining to me and the table that actually ghouls can coup de grace him if he's paralyzed, and that no one is threatening the ghouls. I tried to offer an alternative, but he was really laying it on. Fine, you died. They rip your throat out and you bleed out in seconds. Though he didn't like that at all. The same player, next session, new character. A senile castaway wizard who has been stranded in the sargasso for an unknown length of time, permanently confused, as in he rolls for what he does every turn. I said no, that would backfire. I said that the player character should be controlling the player, and that you can act confused, but don't actually have to roll, and it will just be for flavor. Though, the first round of his combat, he walks 20 feet forward straight into a pack of ghouls, and is killed via attacks of opportunity. We found out that he decided to roll for confusion in secret, and this was the result. Same player, new character. Vanara, a monkey folk monk with a vow of silence. Some kind of obscure monk variant that gets to chain together trip, grapple, and unarmed strikes to deal 5 times unarmed attack advantage every turn. The party was fighting ghouls, giant lobsters with tentacles, and parasitic venom. In other words, they are good at grappling and cannot be tripped. I didn't plan this, I swear. He did okay at first, but it was clear that these enemies were his bane. He had to be careful and fight defensively. Work with the rest of the party to take them down one at a time. That night, while the party is resting, he decides he doesn't want to sleep, and instead wanders alone into the foggy night to scout for goodies. He places his token right on top of a planned encounter with 2 ghouls. He cannot be seen at this distance in the dark, and the party is mostly asleep. He says he doesn't make a sound because he has sworn a vow of silence, but that doesn't mean that he physically can't. I did suggest that he could yell, that there would be no consequence for breaking his oath. But no, he has sworn, and that is final. The only sound is the rustling of cloth and the snapping of pincers. I set the DC at 12 or so, just trying to be generous. The party finally makes their perception checks on the 3rd round, though they catch up with him just in time to see him eaten. I don't even remember what character concepts he came up with next, but he was aiming for revenge, and I was done with the BS, so I just invented a reason to bring his first character back. But he betrayed the party, then did something reckless again and died. Again, 2 sessions later. Next is the same campaign, but a different player. The player asks, "So, the next port is of my character's own nation, right? Then, unless you come up with a reason for my character to continue on with the party, he is going to leave. He has no reason to stay with the party." I mean, it's not like they saved his life on a deserted island. Not like they fought deadly monsters together. It's not like they have become friends in the weeks that they have traveled together. Not even that they pay him an equal share of the loot, instead of the 10% he would get on most ships. No reason at all. I just let him leave. In the same campaign, one of the above players tells me, "You are railroading us," and proceeds to sit on the ship and waits for adventure hooks to come to them. They don't even go shopping in a vibrant foreign port full of exotic items, people, and locations. I guess I can just toss this city map in the trash, along with the rumor table and the culture notes. That campaign ended at that point. I was just done. I would run 2 more campaigns in this setting to date, and am currently running one, in fact. And it's going great. It sounds like these players didn't take into consideration the work that OP was putting in to provide them a world to play in, with one player just throwing caution to the wind with all of his characters, another player with a character that they claimed would have no reason to be with the party, and another that sulked, claiming that OP was railroading them. It's no wonder that this campaign died after all of that. Thankfully though, it sounds like OP was able to salvage that world and run a game with some other players, who, by the sounds of it, actually appreciate the work OP is putting in. So at least there is a happy ending. Let's move on. DM encouraged me and my character to kill my mom, by Reddit user, The Hermit of Carcosa. I was having a falling out with my mom that eventually led to me cutting her off entirely. I confided with the DM, who was a close friend, about what was going on at the height of this experience, and I never expected where it would go next. In the next session of our game, the party is called to a mysterious meeting with a powerful noble. There's a big reveal, and it's my character's mom, who has never been discussed or introduced before. This is totally out of left field, and wasn't discussed beforehand. The DM plays my character's mom as cold and cruel, very clearly telegraphing a betrayal. Some of the things the character says were direct quotes from my mom that I told the DM in confidence. It gave the impression that this was not my character's mom. This was my mom. Fast forward, and the quest has us working for my character's mom, but not interacting with her directly past this point. Then we get to the end of the session. An NPC hands my character a weapon and directly tells my character, "There's another way to resolve this. You can kill her." And that's the cliffhanger for the week. The rest of the party didn't know what was going on, and I talked with the DM immediately after this. I was very clear that I did not like this, that it was a betrayal of my trust, that I was extremely uncomfortable about the cliffhanger, and that I didn't want to continue with this plotline anymore. I was really clear that if this continued, I was going to drop out of the game. The DM basically said, "I didn't know it would be a problem for you," and that they thought it would be therapeutic or cathartic. They also tried to tell me that I couldn't drop out because the next few sessions were centered around my character, and it wouldn't be fair to the other players to drop this plotline and switch to a new quest. I said fuck that and peaced out. As a result of this and some other shit, I also stopped talking to the DM. That was definitely stepping over a line there. D&D is supposed to be an escape, not a playground for a DM to try to perform some sort of pseudo-therapy for a player. For that DM to bring OP's personal tribulations into the game as a plot point was going way too far. And when OP told them that they didn't like that and didn't want to continue, the DM's main concern is the plot of the game, I would have noped out too. That is just super messed up. Anyway, let's move on to the next post. I think it's time for me to return home. Okay, bye. By Reddit user Tuku Fox. Warning, this post is extra mild. Mostly gonna just be complaining about behavior that barely classifies as rude, so keep that in mind going forward. The cast: Charlie, our problem player. Bill, older player. Gary, some guy who I never saw again. And me, some bastard. I had a guy in one of my campaigns, well, 2 actually, but it didn't go well either time. The first time wasn't all that interesting. Charlie came for 2 sessions, and brought his shy brother to the second time. I asked said brother if he wanted to be there, but got a shrug. They kinda had opposite problems. I think they're both on the spectrum somewhere, so I tried to accommodate, but I wasn't sure how. Charlie would overly roleplay everything that happened, and would constantly wrench the spotlight back his way. His brother and I basically had to force our way into saying anything at all. This didn't feel great for me, or I imagine, him. I didn't mean to, but it really felt afterward like I'd been picking on the poor guy. Anyway, the brother didn't show up the next time, and the guy dipped because I had quote-unquote boring storytelling. That sucked, but oh well. I had asked, so that was on me. Anyway, this next time he came back, he played a dwarf forge cleric. All well and good. The setting is involved, but the short of it is that they all live in a kind of mercenary hero guild. At first, I wasn't sure if I wanted Charlie back after he vanished that first time, but he expressed an interest in the world I built, and I am an absolute sucker for anyone that gives my shitty world building the time of day. So, I had him go on a mission with a recurring player. Bill and one other guy we'll call Gary go to clear out some kobolds. Gary was probably another horror story. He tried to piss on one of the kobolds and take another as a slave, but he vanished the next session. Oh well. Anyway, Charlie plays for more sessions and kinda gets louder and makes everything about him. I kinda enable this because the stuff he does lets me dump exposition, but I think it's starting to bore my other players, so I try to make a point to focus on them more. After I tell him about his character's in-game homeland, he says, "I think it's time for me to return home," and the party bids him farewell, and he's a bit shocked. He gets this weird look on his face and says, my character is going here. That's what my character would want to do." And everyone else says, okay. I ask him if he's sure he wants to do that and make another character, and he's surprised again. I really think it didn't cross his mind until just then that he wasn't the main character, and that everyone would not drop everything so he could be a tourist. It was such a small event, but was really emblematic of his attitude about everything, which is why it gets to be the title of the post. Eventually, he decides, yes, he's going to make a new character, and with this one, I actually went out of my way to tie it into the main quest. He's a warlock with a patron that's deeply tied to the world's lore, which he liked, though I probably showered too much attention on him again, and one of my other players actually asked me not to make him a plot focal point. I'll also mention here that he kinda wound up getting the shit kicked out of him in combat though. He built a quote-unquote unique warlock that didn't know Eldritch Blast, didn't do much damage, had no armor, and blundered into a lot of traps. I think the moment that caused him to quietly abandon me again was when I was explaining something to another player, and he tried to interject something. I gestured for him to quiet down for a second, and finished with that player before I got back to him. And when I did, he looked like I had slapped him. Anyway, he showed up next time at a different table, without a fucking word. I played in a one-shot with him once after that, so I got to feel what it was like for my poor players. It was supposed to be a basic go to a village, do a thing, and here's some combat type of thing. And he wound up trying to run this big, suffocating dragon sorcerer discovering his powers arc, and would keep loudly derailing the bare bones plot to bring the spotlight back to him. So anyway, no, he will not be allowed back at my table. Well, yeah, I mean, Spotlight Hog characters can get a bit annoying in a game, but from what I have read, OP should have pulled that player aside and talked to him privately about his behavior, and why it was affecting the other players in a negative way. If what OP said is correct, and this player was on the spectrum, they probably wouldn't have picked up on the social cues that his Spotlight Hog activity was affecting the game negatively. Also, OP shushing the player when he was trying to interject during another player's part was probably traumatic for him, thus why he just didn't say anything and opted to try another table. Though this is all based on what I can gather from the words on the screen. Perhaps OP should give that player another shot, but just have a talk with them beforehand. But that is just my thinking. What do you all think? And that is all we have for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.